hoping we'll be a lot better off today. So, how many of you are involved in project management? Great. So, I'm not necessarily the world's expert on this, but I've been fumbling around with it for more than 20 years. From starting games in 1991 back at the ancient Origin Systems, Ultima and Wing Commander, era, and have been trying to figure out how to do it ever since. In those days, every game slipped its schedule and budget every time, and so we've been looking for a good way to do better than that. In fact, the general manager used to stand up in the producers meeting with the company checkbook and say, "I will write you a check for $1 million," and he wasn't kidding, "if you can deliver a game on time." No one could. So, let's start out. So, the essence of project management, as I understand it, comes down to two questions: what is left and what is next? And if you can answer those, you're making a pretty good effort at project management. Today, I want to achieve three things. First, talk about three tools that work well together that you can learn in just this half hour, 45 minutes, and get beyond what those tools are and how you work it to why you would use them and when you would apply them, and then show you that you can build a custom project management machine out of that tool set to do whatever you need to do. Okay, this is the boring part. I know it's early. We'll spin through this fast, but just a little bit of glossary to make sure we're using the same words. First, a calendar day, a regular 24-hour day. Work day, one of those calendar days where we all come to work, so not a holiday. A dev day, one developer's work day. I use for a task day 5 hours on task. Studies show that people have a 4 or 5 hour period during the day when they're highly productive. And so I expect if the dev can give me 5 hours on task in a day, we'll get everything done and they'll never have to crunch. And that leaves time for email, for meetings, for those hallway conversations, for jamming on new ideas, for reading your email, putz around the internet, reading headlines, whatever. That's all allowed for. Leads even less, 4 hours, because I have mentoring to do as well. Team day, that's if all of us come to a meeting for an hour, that's a team hour, it's and if you keep at it for too long, it's a team day, and that gets expensive. We're going to talk about two agile methodologies for managing projects that use the concept of a sprint. And for our purposes today, that means 3 working weeks. Some people say things like, "Oh, we do 2-week sprints," or "we do month sprints," or something. Don't do that. Actually, 3 weeks is great because what you want is to not be in cycle with pay, so that people get no even subconscious association with completion of work goals and getting money. Those should be separate cycles. And if you add 3 of those sprints together, you get to publish. And in the old days, this meant, making an EXE of your game at that state and giving it to the product owner and going, "Here's what we think is good enough to be a game. Do we need to do more, or is this okay?" But that's sort of a natural cycle. Milestone, we all know, is just a goal. It's just an abstract point in the road. It might be something called vertical slice or core X or alpha or beta or whatever you want to call it, but it's just a goal. Repository, version control. You may have a special repository in Perforce or Git or something. It's like, this is our alpha. Check in everything here that goes in the alpha. And then if you build an executable out of that, that's a version, with a version number. And that version may well be a candidate that you want tested. We think this is the release candidate. Test it and see if there's anything wrong with it that we need to fix before we put it out to the public. And everybody knows what a task is. Sometimes they have subtask. One of the things I really like to focus on is work product. Sometimes I believe that the people doing the work ought to make their own tasks and they ought to estimate them. I don't think estimates should be made by anyone but the person doing the work. And so sometimes a newer developer will have a hard time understanding where to put the box around what the task is. So maybe there's a goal of getting a design for a feature completed and approved by stakeholders and ready to implement. And so sometimes you'll see a task like get the lead designer to approve this, but you're not in control of the lead designer, but what you are in control of is the work product, which is the design document or the implementation instructions or something that's a measurable work product. Everybody knows what the backlog is. That's just all the things we can think of now that we know need to be done at some point, even if they're not in progress now. In terms of agile methodologies, you'll hear terms like user story or epic story or master task. Those are just containers, just abstract concepts for a container that holds a bunch of tasks, so you can group them. Not a big deal. And we probably all understand dependencies. You can't animate the character until you model the character and rig the character, and so those are dependencies that prevent, let's say, animation from happening. Well, one more page and I'll go fast. Sorry about this. To succeed at project management, you have to have a way of measuring what's happening to see if it matches the plan at all or your expectations. One of the very common ones in Agile methodologies is a graph called a burn down, and that's where you take all the estimates for all the work you want to have done in this period, say a 3-week period, and you divide those estimates by the number of days and make a trend line that's just downward. So for instance, if there are 10 of us, 15 working days in a sprint, 150 days worth of task, we know we have to clear 10 days worth per calendar day to follow that trend line down to arrive at the end of the sprint with all the work done. And so it's sort of a speedometer, very commonly used. An easier version of that is just velocity. How many task days are we clearing per work day? So the rate at which your team consumes tasks. Sometimes I advise people to think of their development team as an engine that consumes fuel at a rate, fuel being tasks in this analogy. If you run the engine too fast, you wear it out more quickly. If you don't run it fast enough, it gets choked with carbon and clogs. It's an inefficient engine. So you want to find that good level of performance where they can, good velocity where they consume task at a good rate and it's sustainable. Another way I think about that is utilization. If you have a set of specialist programmers, artists, designers, and so forth, animators on a team, you have a fairly well constructed pipeline when the person that has the rarest job, say particle effects, has a full time of worth of material to do, where it might take 2 animators or 3 or something to be at unity with the least used job. If I'm saying that in a way that makes sense. Composer, if they keep themselves occupied, you might need multiple of other specialties to whole team work at that rate. So utilization is a measure of how well utilized all the people are. A really important one, we'll see this soon, found versus fixed rate when talking about bugs. And it's basically, are you finding more or fixing more today? How was it yesterday? This is super important to knowing if you're approaching ready to launch. If you only use one measure, this will be it. Bug count, obviously just a count. Tasking level, sometimes we look and we see across a group of developers, maybe we have 11 working days left in this period that we're doing now, and somebody has 12 days worth of tasks. So some load balancing or some scoping has to happen to stay realistic. You know, if you look up in 10 working days, somebody's got 13 days worth of tasks, that's just not humane or realistic, and we have to make adjustments. So that always makes sense. As you'll hear a lot today, I manage by capacity. And it's not, that concept's not used often enough in game project management. Too often you have a lead designer, executive, or someone say, here are all the cool things I could think of. Let's do these. And it has no basis, no relationship to the number of people that are working on it or the number of days you hope to spend getting something done. So I think it's super important to start with capacity. So, you know, if all of us in the room here were agreeing to work on something for 100 days, and we knew when vacations were, a lot for some sick days and so forth, we'd know how many developer days and capacity this whole room could provide. That would tell us a lot about what scope of work we could hope to accomplish. When we talk about Agile and roles, when we talk about Agile, there's kind of a different character there than in traditional project management, and that is the product owner. They're responsible, they're sort of the author. They're responsible to think what the game needs that the public would want. And so they also own the priority of things, like what's more important than the other thing. They get their feet held to the fire if it doesn't sell. Well, the rest of us get our feet held to the fire if we don't get to the finish line. By the way, this is a lot of notes to take. If I can make this file available to you or email it to people or whatever if you want these lists. But going on, Scrum Master, if using Agile methodology, is basically like the meeting facilitator. More on that in a minute. A lead, for our purposes in this discussion today, is just the manager of a specialization, like design lead or lead artist or lead programmer. You know, they're a specialist, and they're the leader of their group of specialists. Nothing too unusual there. The producer nowadays is more often the business unit manager. So what they produce is commercial success, you know, out of your concept in your game team. Whereas the project manager is the time and effort accountant, and many times those two jobs are combined. So my title is producer at Tripwire, but I'm also the primary project manager. Not too big of a deal, but the different roles, for instance, on Star Wars: The Old Republic, I was one of several project managers. In my particular case, I managed the partner relationship between Lucas and EA and BioWare, as opposed to days and dollars and time. But on, say, DC Universe, I was the only project manager, so I was doing definitely days and tasking and milestones and stuff for that 140-person team. Developers, of course, all the wonderful people that are the source of the raw material that becomes a game. You know, we don't have train cars full of steel and wood and so forth rolling up to the back like other industries that get turned into our product. Our product is your brains plus caffeine plus sugar. And so very important to this process. Testers, of course, test the games, and the test lead establishes a strategy or plan for testing, which is really important. Okay, all that stuff aside, now we can get down to the good stuff. 3 variables in managing your project: capacity, i.e. headcount, scope or feature set that you're trying to make, and the duration in which you hope to have the work done. And different project management methodologies are particularly good at managing for one of those. Executives always want us to fix all 3 points of the triangle, but that is a physical impossibility. One must float. You know, one of your first questions to your funding source, the executive, the owner of the company, whoever you're answering to here, is what can't change. And that'll tell you sort of which of these things you have to manage the hardest. And today, what we want to talk about are 3 methods that you can pick that are especially good at those different things. So the first one, Kanban, from the Japanese for billboard or signboard. What we use in software development is not really Kanban that Toyota and Suzuki created, where that was really about parts picking from the warehouse. They had those old pigeonhole mailboxes like companies used to have, and they would put different colored cards in to say what parts to pick from the warehouse to build the next thing. We're not exactly doing that, but it's related. Second one, and both of these top 2 are agile methods, Scrum. And then lastly, I want to show you a variant of the classic waterfall project management methodology known as triage. Some people call this live cafe. But that's great for dates. Scrum's good for figuring out where the fun is. And Kanban is the best at just sheer velocity. If you kind of know what you need to do, but you need to get it done as fast as possible, that's the winner. So let's have a look. So Kanban, another term for this is continuous loading. While the name suggests this Japanese industrial technique, what we do is actually more closely related to amusement park management, in this case, a method called continuous loading. If you're old enough, you may remember when roller coasters would let 4 or 5 cars aggregate at the loading area and then fill them all up with people and send them out. And they figured out if they just loaded each car as it came in, continuous loading, they'd serve 20% more riders in a day. So this methodology is a close cousin to that, so sometimes it's called continuous loading. I thought I invented this in the past before I read up more, and I called it big list project management. So, and then I discovered other people have been doing it for years. But here's the essence of it. The defining features are you need a board with 3 columns: to do, doing, and done. That's it, very simple. Interesting to note here, studies show that just a simple list of things you intend to do with a feedback loop, that is the ability to alter the list as you go, gives you 66% of the effectiveness of the best expert system. So at least make a list, and that'll put you 66% ahead. So the task board has 3 columns. You put up stickies or index cards or virtual versions of the task you intend to do. You talk to each other daily just for 5 minutes. Ted, what are you working on? I'm still working on the install. Okay, it's work in progress, a day down on that. But this is moving to done, which is, by the way, the start column for QA. Really straightforward. The manager, this is the continuous loading part, the manager moves new task out of the backlog and onto the to-do column as necessary to keep everyone well fed. It really works with those 2 questions. What's left? What's next? Because the to-do column is what's left, and what's going on right now is what's going on. So this also includes the concept of work is work. Is it a bug? Is it a task? Is it a feature? Doesn't matter. Same people do all that work anyway. Just put it on the board and get it done. The executive walks in with his hair on fire. We have an opportunity to do this special thing at E3. Okay, let's put it on a card. Capture it. Okay, so the strengths for Kanban are sheer velocity. You can really get stuff done. You can prioritize on the fly. It's very flexible. It doesn't care if it's a task or a bug. You can modulate your capacity day by day. Susan had a doctor's appointment today. That's 1 day down in capacity. Put this back in the backlog. Do whatever you got to do to make it make sense every day. It handles quirky management, let's say. People come in with a brilliant idea, or suddenly they hate this feature or something like that. Tear up the card, make a new one, put it up. You're back on track. Very low waste. It's also very low overhead. You're only taking 20 minutes of developer time a day, and the rest of their day they're making the game, which is good. Yes, sir?
Did you say this entire file is available, or just the terms?
Any of it you like.
Okay. Can you make the entire file available?
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is kind of dense. It's kind of information rich, I hope, to make it worth your effort to get a Sunday morning. So when you would not use Kanban is when maybe there's a morale issue at your shop and you want to improve developer empowerment. Devs don't really have a lot to say here. The card moves into the column. They have to pick something to do today. These are the choices. They pick one, move it over into in progress, and get started. There's not a lot of people standing around. So what do you think about this feature? What would you rather do? So also can lead to fatigue. If you try and get people to take more than 5 hours a day, you're going to start crisping them up around the edges. You know, you can go fast, but you don't want to push too hard. Doesn't involve a lot of detailed planning, and it's not the best at quality control. You do move fast, but when you move faster, you make more bugs. So here's kind of the trade-offs. But if you have a good idea what you want to accomplish, it's similar to something you've done before, and you need to go in a hurry, this is the simplest system, lowest overhead, that'll really get you moving. Okay, so that's that one. Here, let's look at a couple things. So this is just like a drawing of a typical Kanban board, if you're wondering, you know, what that would look like. A lot of whiteboards actually are magnetic, and you can use magnets to hold up actual cards. You can use stickies. Here's just a programmer's personal board, stuff he's working on with stickies. So this works at a individual level, but also for a whole team. At our shop, we use Jira, which has a virtual version, virtual card. So we just go into a conference room in the morning, and people just drag the virtual cards over to represent the things they're doing. All right, so here's just a few sort of pro tips to go with this. So you want to get started with Kanban. Build your backlog. Put in whatever kind of task you can think of. It's helpful if you put priority on them, because you want to do, in all that agile methodologies, do the most important, riskiest, most unknown stuff first, because then if you have to scope something out later, it's the boring, not so important, mundane stuff. Put your board up, get the cards up, set up a morning meeting. People hate meetings, I get it, but just make it a short one. Just come in, move the cards, everyone look at one another. This is how Kanban handles dependencies, because you move a card over, it says I'm going to start doing this, and someone who has a dependent task goes, oh, let me know when that's done, because I get the file next, or I need to check that out, or out of Perforce, or so they communicate with each other. Only let people fill about 80% of their capacity, because stuff happens. And the manager's job is to keep that to-do column nicely topped up. By the way, a little pro tip here. Brother makes for under $100 these little USB label printers that print stickers that fit just nicely on a regular index card, and you can print from Excel. So you could put a task list in Excel, hit print once, get a whole stream of stickers, have them on index cards and on the board for the next morning in minutes. So pretty useful. Okay. So, and then how do you know if you're doing it right? By the way, success measures. You see your velocity go up. It's near 1. In other words, 1 task a day cleared per calendar day per person. People are really putting 5 hours a day on task. Everybody has a choice or two of things to do that day when they go look at the board. Everybody's nicely filled, but not overfilled. And changes come up, and you handle them. So that tells you that the system's working for you. Now let's make a slight variation. Scrum. Really popular these days, maybe the best development methodology for games ever. Because beware of this, most people that offer instruction in project management, it's like especially true of like PMI kind of classes and that kind of thing, It's for software as a service, where you go out to a customer and go, how do you want your database of the insurance company to work, and do requirements capture and so forth, and you go build it for them. But in games, largely, we're our customer, and we're not, sometimes the cafe makes toast because you ordered it, but we're more like farmers that are growing wheat because there's a market for it and we hope to sell it later. So it's the difference between push and pull project management. So methods developed to service customers are less useful for us. This one, though, is really good for us. You'll see why. So it's also called extreme programming sometimes, or something close to it is. It's definitely an agile method. Some people just call it sprinting. Here we go. So the defining features. Take that same Kanban task board that you had before with the columns. Same thing. But now let's create a 3-week time box around the stuff that goes on the board. And that's the sprint or the rugby scrum. It's like you snap the ball, you have a short period of time to work as hard on it as you can, stop, and see what happened. It's like a play in football. So you take that same task board. You still have these daily meetings. Now they're called stand-ups. They're limited to a maximum of 15 minutes. You're only talking about 3 questions. Here's what I did last, here's what I'm doing next, and here's the thing that's slowing me down, if any. And each person in turn comes to the board, moves their cards, and answers those 3 questions. You remain standing rather than sitting to ensure that you keep the meeting short and keep moving. And hopefully at the end, if you do an electronic version of the board, you can have it, and Jira will do this, auto-calculate the burn down. So you go, okay, everybody's moved their cards for the day. Let's check the speedometer and see how fast we're going. This looks like we will get done on time. Good work, guys. Or somebody's going to have to step it up. We're a day off the mark. Okay. Now the cost of this is in your 3-week period. That would be 15 working days. You take 1 full day to plan with the whole team, and 1 full day for sprint review. Our next sprint review, for instance, is on the 16th. We show the whole company all of the work completed in that 3-week period, and which is great, because if you're heads down working on something over here, you might not know that this whole character's been added, or a new weapon with a fancy feature or something's been added because you've been working on something else. So it's great to show off your hard work, how cool it is, and let everybody else see it, and also to share a common understanding of where we are on the map. 2 really big concepts that make Scrum work is we separate intent from implementation. The product owner can say user stories like, as a player, I want to be able to change weapons really quickly. So in type moments, I can get the weapon I want instantly. What they can't say is, so let's make a UI task that brings up a control rows, and when you click this button, that's implementation. They should stop that, because the developers doing the work own the scoping and the implementation. They're committed, so this is the other concept, commitment. Nothing slips out of the sprint. We've committed to do the work we said in the planning day, and whatever it takes, how much hard work it takes, we will get that done in 3 weeks. We're not guaranteeing what the scoping is, but enough that the product owner can see the result and go, is that enough? Do we need more? Do we need to tune that somehow? But if you're saying you're going to get a weapon switch feature in 3 weeks, you get it in. Now the developers themselves will create the subtask, they'll estimate them, and so they can scope it down. It's like, well, we can't get in the full thing now. You'll only be able to switch weapons with this cheat code because there's no time to implement the UI. But it will demonstrate the feature functioning to the product owner. So that's the difference from Kanban, those 2 concepts. The strengths. So this still is highly efficient. out of 3 weeks, you lose 2 days to thinking and feeling, to like planning what you're going to do and then seeing the results of it to see if it's what you wanted. But it's still very efficient. It's really good for developer empowerment because you can just say, you guys get to own the scoping. You get to figure out what the subtasks are. You get to basically design the specifics of the feature on a week-by-week basis. So they really feel involved with the design. It's great at solving, like, how does the how does the upgrade system work here? What currency do we use, and what steps and so forth. Scrum is great at finding those answers because you iterate every 3 weeks. You put something together. It's a simple feature, subset of the features. You look at it. That race car doesn't turn. So okay, as a next user story, as a player, I want to be able to turn the car. Okay, you know what you're doing next. It's good for morale, showing off people's work every 3 weeks, having fixed goals, largely achieving them every 3 weeks. It's surprising how much distance you make, and people look back at previous sprint reviews and go, wow, look at what we've done in 9 weeks. Pretty nice. Keeps everybody in sync, also low waste. It keeps you focused on intent. As developers, we tend to make too much software because we'll make this big list, here's all the cool stuff I could think of, and you start making that, and you have no idea if any of that stuff is even needed. Scoping for a game is pretty healthy. Every game probably ought to go through 2 kind of painful rounds of scoping down to bring it to clarity, and this helps with that. Quite flexible. Weaknesses, it doesn't handle bugs very well at all because you only got 3 weeks, your capacity is 85% filled. If suddenly the stuff you did in the first half of the sprint starts making bugs in the last half, you have no real choice but to invent more time, find some extra hours somewhere to get that stuff fixed because you've committed to getting it done in time. The other kind of weakness is executives get very quirky around Scrum because it doesn't talk about fixed time frames out in the future. It's like, when do we get to beta again? I don't know. We go 3 weeks at a time, and when you say it's beta, it's beta. And it's like, but we want to spend $1 million on advertising. When do I commit that? Can't tell you. So you can understand how they'd be a little nervous about that. The good news is you make better games faster this way if you don't think about dates, if you think about the work. But until they've been through that loop once, some execs get a little nervous about it. So when to use this? The bottom line is, have you found the fun yet? If you have, you don't need this. If you haven't found the fun, you do need something like this so you can iterate and go, is this better than what we had 3 weeks ago? If not, keep digging in. Let's keep going at this till we're like really on to something. Okay. So, how to. Get your board up just like before, schedule 3-week sprints, and every third one of those, the end of the publish, and make sure you do a good retrospective of where we've got to. Make someone the product owner. This is, used to producers were the auteur, but this method really requires one. User stories. Make user stories. As a player, I want to, whatever it is I want to do, and that drives the work. And but if you need something big that can't, and by the way, those user stories should be accomplished in 3 weeks by the group of people you have. But if you have something bigger that can't fit in 3 weeks with the people you have, that becomes an epic story, which is up in the hierarchy one. It's a bigger container that can hold multiple user stories. So if if your epic stories, as a player, I want a super epic melee system, and then you may have user stories like, as a player, I want 3+ melee attacks, and another one might be, as a player, I want parry and blocking and so forth. Then those can be worked in 3 weeks. On planning day, first of 15, look at where you are, get the stories, get the priority from the product owner. You estimate twice. You estimate each user story, you want to solve, can this fit in 3 weeks? You measure, and you don't want to overcommit because you definitely want to commit. So you try, yes?
But you call them user stories?
The user story is a container of tasks, an intellectual, just a abstracted symbol or a container of task. And it's called a user story because you try and make it from the perspective of the player. And they always start, as a player, I want something. I want awesome music in the game. And so that you make sure you're doing work that makes a difference to the customer. And then subtask, the developers themselves create the task inside that container, not the product owner. So this is how we keep intent and implementation separate and empower the developers to make the right stuff. So you calculate the team's capacity. So 3 key steps here. You estimate the user stories, not the task in them, but just in a general way, the user stories. Then you look at capacity, and then you only commit to the stories that will fit your capacity, so you don't overcommit. Yes?
How do you calculate team capacity again? Like, what would be a good formula?
So the way we do it is, because the whole team is in planning, you have the whole day for it. So let's go person by person and say, this particular sprint is three weeks, but minus a planning day and a review day leaves 13 working days. But in this particular sprint, we have Columbus Day. Tomorrow is a holiday. So really, there's only 12 working days in this sprint. Do you have a doctor's appointment booked? Do you have any vacation days booked? Do you have any commitment to other projects within that 12 working days? And if so, what's your personal capacity? And then we add that up, have it on on-screen calculator, just add that up as we go around the room. By the way, ideal Scrum teams are between 4 and 10 people, because in 15 minutes, if everybody has to talk in the stand-up and you have more than 12 people, somebody doesn't get to talk. So we just go around, ask everybody their personal capacity, tally that up, and go, look, we have 151 developer days maximum, and then I multiply that times 0.85 to go, oh, look, we're really only trying to fill 96 developer days here. And so then you look at the big user stories and see roughly how big they are, so you can commit. And then you go back to your desk and create the actual subtask for each of those stories.
So what about the other rooms that would have teams of 2 to 3 people? Would this be viable?
It's for 2 or 3 people, you already see each other so much, communicate so much, you could probably do everything you need with Kanban and just have less overhead, spend less time doing it. And just put stickies in the to-do, let other people do that, because you usually can just turn and say, what were you working on yesterday? And you don't need this formal of a system. These are the 2 agile methods I was mentioning. You'll probably use one of these. You probably won't use both of these on the same project. And but this one's really good when you have like 6 separate Scrum teams. You have the combat team and the world team and the server team and so forth, and you're getting all that work done. Time-wise, I'm going to have to keep going. I'll run over until they make me stop, but we'll just keep going. If you have any questions, I'll hang around the lobby or whatever, because I think this stuff's really important. How to. So I'm going to have to skip a little. It's basically like Kanban. If you need to know exactly how to do this, go to Mountain Goat Scrum on the web. There's a guy, Mike Cohn, who does this the right way, sells the right instructions for it, even crazy little things like there's a specific deck of cards you use for this planning session I'm talking about to do what's called poker planning, to determine how big your user stories probably are. Rather than hear me talk about it, see what he has to say. Good stuff. It's the official Sony project management methodology, by the way. But basically just commit, plan, commit, execute for 13 days, and review what happened. By the way, here's what a burn down chart looks like. The blue trend line is if you burn down the right amount of work every day, you'll end up at the end of the sprint with everything done. The red lines are actual results. So you can see if you're above the line, you need to work a little harder. If you're below the line, you're cool. The poker planning cards use a weird set of numbers, 0, 1/2, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. 13 remembers the full sprint, 13 working days in sprint. It's the golden ratio. Because the bigger your estimate, the more wrong it is. So it automatically adds fluff in as you get a bigger number. No worries. You know it's working for you if you're getting the most important stuff first, so that if anything has to be scoped later, it's not important. You have almost no overtime. Everybody's loving review days. You're getting high utilization numbers out of the team, and people aren't feeling crispy. And quickly, this last one, just to keep within time, triage. So the most basic project management methodology, the one that you would think of if you didn't know anything about it, is called waterfall, where you just think of all the tasks, guess how long it takes to do them, put them all out in order, and just get started. And by the end, of course, it never ends up like you thought. So it's not the most popular one. But sometimes in games, you got to hit dates. And so, more on this in a minute. But what triage is where you have a dashboard that counts down to a specific milestone, and you look at task days per developer. So to know if you have 12 days worth of work to finish in 10, which won't work. And you also have a graph for found versus fixed bugs from QA. Because when you start to fix more than are being found, the bugs remaining in the software are not very many, and you're getting close to release quality. And it gets you to a sign-off state. So when you use this is when you got to hit dates. You're doing advertising. You have a Steam sale. You have a free weekend. You have to make E3. You have etc. So you put that date on your calendar and you count backward until where you are now, and you see how many days you have to go, and you look at the work that's left, and you start, just like a military version of the word of triage, things start getting scoped and cut and reduced, simplified, or moved around, load balance between developers, and those kinds of things. And like I say, I'm happy to make this available for folks, so I don't expect you to write all this down now, but it's a really good system. We use this at several places I've worked. We use this on Killing Floor 2 to hit our early access dates and Steam sales and so forth, and it works very reliably. You just look at what's left, what's next, and how many days we have to do it, and make it make sense every day. Don't walk out of that daily meeting unless you're on a vector that arrives on time. So basically you look at all the tasks, you assign them, you get estimates from the developers, you put the dates. We like to leave a couple of weeks. We like to lock the software, stop taking check-in, stop taking new features, new assets, lock it down, and build a version, and have QA test the heck out of it for at least 2 weeks to make sure that's a good release candidate. And if it's not, we build more candidates till we get one that's clean. There were some issues with the release of Red Orchestra 2 before I started at Tripwire. There were some bugs there and so forth, but since we've gone to this, Rising Storm and KF2 have been pretty clean releases, and this is why. And this can be efficient too, because the devs don't have to come to this meeting. Just a couple. This is the steering committee, the leads, stakeholders, the project manager, and if you see somebody that has a problem, they're overtasked or they're undertasked, just go grab them real quick and fix them up. I tell people that all the time. If there's a problem with your list, come into the triage meeting. We'll fix it today. Just don't let a day go by that's not balanced. And here's what those boards kind of look like. The up and down graph is found versus fixed. So if green is winning, the world is good. If the found bug rate, the red line, is winning, you got work to do. And the pie chart sort of like who has the most days left. Oh, the poor particle artist, because there's only one of him, and we have 8 new weapons. You know, these guys are really busy. So that's sort of what that dashboard looks like. So which one do you use? Which of these things do you use? So just add up anything that, you know, if you add these columns. So found the fun, you haven't, you have some of it, or you totally have it. If the time frame is not fixed, or you need it as fast as possible, or you know you're tied to an event like E3 that can't move. How about your asset pipeline? Are you figuring out how you're going to make characters, or you totally know how to make these characters, or it's probably going to be something similar to something you've done before. So if you don't know where the fun is, but your time frame's not set, and you have things to figure out, you need Scrum. If you kind of know what you're doing, but you need to go fast, you need Kanban. If you have to hit E3, if you have to hit your release date, if funding runs out at some point and you have to get as much done, you know, as you can before payroll's all used up, you need triage. And in fact, we missed triage success measures. I got out of order. Basically, this is working for you if you're hitting dates. It's as easy as that, and you will. If you look at it daily, you will. And I recommend you use 2. Pick one agile method that makes sense for your group. Use that for the first half of the development cycle till you know what the fun is and you know how to build things for this game, because it's different. We do R&D for every game, right? You have to kind of figure it out again every time. And then you can transition at some point to this waterfall methodology for triage and sort of ride the circus tent down till you get your candidate that QA says is, man, this thing's clean, low bug count, optimized, it's ready to go out to the public. Thanks, everyone. Again, thanks. Sorry for being late. Thanks for turning out on a Sunday morning. I'll take any questions you have. When they chase us out of the room, I'll hang out in the lobby for a while if you have any other questions or you're seeking advice for a particular application. Yep.
Where can we find the PowerPoint?
That's a good question. We'll figure out some way to do that. I don't know the answer yet. We'll find some. In the worst case, I'll host it on Tripwire's website.
Thanks, Al.